Oh, and we are recording. So first, let me quickly describe our mission in case you haven't heard it before. Our mission at Hunger Intervention Program is to increase food security for underserved populations in North King County through nutritious meals, educational programs, and advocacy. Along the way, we attempt to do this work in a way that shows our values that we've chosen together as an organization, and those values are nutritious food, community, equity, empowerment, advocacy, and environmental sustainability, which I hope shows in the work that we do. And if we do that correctly through our values, we will ultimately end up with nutritious food that is accessible to everyone in our community. Next slide, please. So here we have a little infographic showing our different programs that comprise HIP. And even though many of you are quite familiar with HIP, I think it's worth quickly breezing through the different programs that we have at the organization, because I often find that interacting with this organization can be like that old tale of the blind men and the elephant, where 5 different blind men are touching a different part of an elephant, and one describes it as a thin tail with a little fluff at the end, and the other describes it as a soft trunk, and another says, no, it's a hard piece of ivory, but it's all the same thing. And I find that's often the case with HIP. Someone will say, yeah, I know what HIP is. That's the place that the healthy HIP packs come from, or that's the place that does senior meals. So let me just quickly go through our programs. First and foremost, we are a meal program that makes meals. So we do that through 5 unique programs that serve different populations. We do it through our senior community meal. That senior community meal has 2 different locations. We're doing that out of the Lake City Community Center and the Northgate Community Center. And those meals respectively serve Latinx, Chinese, and East African seniors. We have a trio of childhood nutrition programs that are all designed to serve children and their families during times that school breakfast and lunch is not available to them. So that's our Healthy Hip Pack program, which is a weekend food program for kids. That's done through partnership with local schools. There's our Summer Eats program, which is meant to help make up meals that are lost in the summertime when kids don't have access to those school meals. And a small after-school meal program that is in partnership with the Lake City Library. Our newest program is our shelter meal program, and that is in partnership with Lake City Partners Ending Homelessness. They are running North King County's only enhanced shelter, and we are the meal provider for that shelter. That is the bulk of our programming, but we do also have a suite of nutrition education programs, and those nutrition education programs can take a couple different forms. They might be skill building class series. They could be one-off events. They could be attending community events, or kind of other as needed educational opportunities. And then last but not least is our growing advocacy program that Srijan will touch on a bit more soon, but can involve things like going to anti-hunger lobby days, or informing our hipster community of small actions that they can take on a day-to-day basis to create systemic change beyond what we do here on a daily basis. So without further ado, that is my element, and I will pass it on to Finika to talk a bit more about the strategic planning process.
Yeah, thanks, Darcy. Before we outline the priorities that we came up with in this plan, I think it's important to share a little bit of context about how we got here. So you can go to the next slide, Maddie. Sorry if the font is a little small, but hopefully folks can see all the things that are going on in this slide. This process started off actually quite a while ago, in April of last year. So it's been almost a full year of intentional work to make sure that input and needs and strengths of HIP's communities are reflected in this plan that we built together. This process was led by our fearless strategic planning committee, which was a group of folks from the HIP board and staff, as well as a strategic planning consultant that really drove, they were the core group in driving the planning, the community engagement, the outreach, facilitating our retreats and our planning sessions. So they're kind of the core group overseeing all this work. And this year we spent really a lot of our time and energy in the strategic planning process to make sure that this plan is rooted and guided in the expertise that you all have. So our partners, our funders and donors, and our volunteers, and most importantly, the communities that we work to support. So to do that, to make sure that this plan is rooted in those voices, we spent a lot of time in this this discovery phase that you'll see in the lighter green box, before we started any of our kind of strategic planning. So in that time, we engaged 90 stakeholders and over 100 community members through a few different ways. We conducted 90 interviews with community members to try and assess and understand their food needs and their gaps and their wants. We conducted 28 interviews with donors and volunteers and other partner organizations to kind of get their perspective on our strengths and opportunities and the landscape of this work. And then conducted 8 focus groups and community listening sessions with both volunteers and specific groups of program participants. You can roll to the next slide, Maddie. And throughout that process, building on this founding understanding at HIP that Black and Indigenous and communities of color are disproportionately impacted by food insecurity. As you see in a few of these statistics that we threw on the slide. So for example, Latinx households are twice as likely to experience food insecurity, and Black households are 3 times as likely to experience food insecurity. And then here in King County, we have seen throughout the pandemic that Latinx, Black, and Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders were disproportionately seeking assistance through food assistance through the pandemic. So kind of building on this founding understanding, we knew it was important to make sure that voices of Black and Indigenous and other communities of color were reflected in this plan. So working with community liaisons, we made sure that our community listening sessions were diverse groups of folks. So the vast majority of people that we talked and heard from in our community listening sessions identified as from a community of color. So, Maddie, next slide. With all this information that we gathered during the discovery phase and the listening sessions and the interviews and the focus groups, we took that as HIP board and staff and then built on those themes that we heard from folks in 3 different planning sessions and retreats. And then all of that brought us to today, where we're officially launching and sharing what we found in our strategic planning process and are starting to kind of turn more towards how do we implement this and plan for that. So just sharing some gratitude. I'm sure there are probably folks on this call who were a part of those interviews or focus groups, and really grateful to everyone for sharing their time and participating in the process. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Srijan, one of our co-executive directors, to kind of walk us through what we found.
Thank you for setting the context. Again, in case you don't know me, I'm Srijan Chakraborty, and I'm the co-executive director with Darcy. And I'm excited to see so many familiar faces and also some new faces. So thank you for spending part of your Wednesday with us and learning about our strategic plan. So with that, I'll dive right into the 5 strategic priorities that we came up with for the next 5 years. Our first priority is building and deepening strong partnerships in the community. Now, partnerships, like anyone who has worked with HIP, you would know that partnerships have always been an unwritten value at HIP. And we know that we are part of a larger ecosystem of organizations, movements, people, and it's only with partnerships with other organizations, so there's businesses, institutions, community groups, faith organizations, that we can bring about the changes that we want to see. So we had actually a healthy debate within our board and staff whether partnership should be a standalone priority or a value that underlies all other priorities. But in the end, I think we felt strongly that partnership is so central to our work that it needs to elevate it on its own as a separate priority. So that's one of the things that came up as part of our process, is partnerships as one of the top level priorities. So what that means is that in the next 5 years, our goal would be to deepen our existing partnerships, form new partnerships to ensure that more people have access to HIP's meals. And also, we will focus on intentionally building partnerships so that people who are coming to our meals can also access other services and resources in the community. So the partnerships can look many different. And as I go through the other priorities, you will see we really cannot do any of those without partnerships. So all of those partnerships elements will be included. So that's the first one. The next priority is building, if you move to the next one, there you go, is building community through food. So what does that mean? So of course, like, food is central to everything we do at HIP. Like, we all, the meal is an important part of why we exist. So we believe people can build community in many ways around food, by breaking bread together, whether sitting together over a dinner, sharing stories. People can build community through cultural celebrations and food. People can build community in the kitchen by preparing and enjoying food together. We already know that happens. Our volunteers who come to our kitchen create community in our kitchen and in our volunteering programs. It can be building community through learning about nutrition and cooking skills and sharing traditional recipes and knowledges. So there's many ways the many form it can take. So over the next 5 years, we will expand more spaces and places where people can build community through culturally appropriate food. And as Finika mentioned, with a specific focus on BIPOC communities. Again, people, Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. I saw a comment that I may be breaking up. Let me know if it keeps happening. So over the next 5 years, again, so we'll keep that focus with BIPOC communities, and it goes without saying, as we said, we can only do this through partnerships with other agencies. So moving to the third one, our third priority is to deepen HIP's commitment to equity and accountability. Now, as Finika mentioned earlier, that we know that BIPOC communities face much higher rates of food insecurity. So which means we will have to have a specific focus on those communities. So there has been a renewed awakening, as you know, that racism is a public health crisis, and we really cannot talk about hunger and food insecurity without acknowledging the generational impacts of colonialism and racism in this country. So while HIP has made strides in its own anti-racism journey, we know that we have long to go, right? So over the next 5 years and beyond,
HIP is committed to doing the hard work that's necessary to become an organization that truly represents the community it serves at all levels, whether it's at the board, staff, donors, volunteers, program participants, etc. We are also committed to
elevating the voices of BIPOC community members as part of that process, and people who have lived experiences, and kind of being accountable to what we hear from them. So that's our priority 3. Moving on to the next one.
I just wanted to jump in. Sorry, Srijan, to interrupt you. We got a few comments that you're a little shaky or quiet. Do other folks, do you feel like you can hear Srijan okay? Is he breaking up? Is he quiet?
I think it just improved.
Okay.
It just improved. Mhm.
Okay, he sounded better towards the end, says Lori.
Yes.
Okay, Srijan, we'll keep going, but folks keep telling us.
Okay, we only have 2 more to go. Hopefully 2 more. So moving on to the next one, our next strategic priority is influencing systems change. So that's priority number 4. By the way, the priorities are not ordered in any particular way. It's not priority 1 is higher important than priority number 4, but just they're in that particular order. So one of the 3 pillars, as Darcy mentioned, of HIP's work or mission is to advocate for policy changes that addresses the root causes of hunger through policy advocacy. So we understand that we cannot end hunger simply by feeding more and more people, right? So it's a systemic issue, which means that only way to address hunger in the long run is to change systems that trap people into this vicious cycle of poverty, hunger, homelessness, and other issues. So, and it's worth mentioning, it's not lost on us that as of today, March 1st, some 30 million people across the US are going to see a portion of their federal food assistance taken away. Like the SNAP, there is going to be a hunger cliff, and the SNAP funding is reducing. Some households could lose hundreds of dollars each month. And let's not forget, many families we are still struggling with high inflation. So food insecurity is not inevitable. We just wanted to emphasize that poverty and hunger are policy choices. There's some intentional policy choices. So therefore, in addition to addressing some of the immediate needs of providing food to people who are hungry now, we as an organization are also committed to long-term systems change work. We know there's a slow work, but we know we have to keep at it. So HIP has been active on the advocacy front for many years. And in the next 5 years, in addition to expanding our advocacy work, we will dedicate more resources and time towards developing grassroots BIPOC leadership for anti-hunger advocacy work in our community. So that's one of the focus areas that's going to be, we are going to spend time on in the next few years. Again, as usual, this work will be done in partnership with other organizations. So if you are in this room and part of an organization that feels any of these priorities speak to you, feel free to reach out to us and we'll find ways to work together. So our last, but of course not the least, strategic priority, number 5, is to expand organizational capacity and well-being. So you can think of this as laying the strong foundation which will make all the other work that I mentioned possible. So this will include taking care of our staff, who are our most valuable resource. We will expand our fundraising capacity so that we can do all the things we said we will do. And also in the next 5 years, we hope to find a new home that will allow us to grow and meet the needs of the community. So those are the 5 strategic priorities. So if we go to the final slide, it basically summarizes the 5 priorities that I just mentioned. And with that, we are at the end of the presentation portion of this webinar or meeting today. Now, if you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. And We can either use your chat, use the chat, or ask your questions. To feel free to unmute yourself and ask them directly. And again, thank you again for joining us this evening.
Jude, I just saw your message. I moved back to priority 4. I hope that's what you were talking about, but let me know.
Thank you. I also have a couple of things I wanted to mention real quick, if it's okay. Okay. First off, thank you very much for recording the meeting. I have short-term memory loss. Thank you so much. Secondly, I just wanted to remind you that a great many of us in public housing are at the 15th percentile of the area median rate, just so you know. And I'm sure you know, we also just lost a huge chunk of our food stamps. I was getting like 281, and as of today, I'm only getting 83. So that's kind of a horrid thing. That's all.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jude. We did have some questions on the RSVP. Maybe this is a good time to go through some of them.
Yeah, I can ask a few of those. I have them pulled up. A couple of them asked about how they can get involved with HIP. And I'm actually happy to answer a little bit about that as the volunteer coordinator at HIP. We have many volunteer opportunities if you are interested in spending some time with us. Most of those opportunities are Monday through Friday, kind of during working hours. We understand that that can be a barrier, but for those who are available during those times, we have meal prep shifts, we have serving shifts, we have meal delivery opportunities, packing parties, and those are sometimes in the evenings. And then we have some other events that happen sometimes on the weekends and other times. So I highly recommend subscribing to our newsletter if you haven't already, because you'll see lots of information about our upcoming programs, ways to get involved, and action alerts for advocacy and other things. I'm happy if anyone else has any other ways to get involved, please jump in, or I can move to the next question.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm Molly with the farmers markets in Seattle. And my question is connected to priority 5. It's a big vision picture, but I wanted to know if you have an idea or your vision for your new home in the next, 5 years or more, what your needs are. Like, are you looking like square footage, and what's your wish list, and would you want that on your own, or would you be willing to share with another food organization that aligned with your mission statements, or that kind of thing? I was just kind of curious.
I can take that, and Darcy or others, please feel free to chime in. We have kind of a one-pager of our wish list. Obviously, kitchen and industrial kitchen is a central thing in anything we do. But we would love to have enough office spaces that offers for all of our staff, for programming spaces where we can do cooking classes, educations, workshops, and maybe even some smaller meal programs. And we would love to share it with other agencies. We don't have to be, definitely we would love sharing as part of our goal, as partnerships, to partner with other agencies and share the same space. And if you're specifically want to more details, we can share the one pager with you and talk about that more.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful to know.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll just add on top of that, that because of some recent shifting we did in our offices here, it made staff a lot more comfortable in the current facilities and has kind of relaxed and changed our timeline for what we might need. And a sneak preview is that there's been some cool conversations amongst staff about a couple different kind of ways to grow. And one is, you know, kind of all in a centralized location. And another is to basically have a more of a hub and spokes model. So that's something we're just kind of fleshing and talking about more.
Cool. Thank you, Darcy.
Jude.
Yes, you may have already mentioned this and it might sound like a stupid question, but I just discovered in reading today that things like onions are in horribly short supply because of the droughts all over the world.
Mhm.
And I was going to make up a list of all the fruits and vegetables, you know, I mean, like eggs went through the ceiling, and so forth. And I'm guessing you're taking all that in account as well in trying to serve people with needed food.
Yeah, I can, Jude, thank you for that. I can kind of kick off the answer to that one. One beauty of the staff and chefs that work here is that it is an environment where you have to stay adaptable with your food options at all times. And that comes from working with donated food streams, occasionally working with really short dated items. It's a very creative environment to be creating menus in. So it does create issues. Food costs a lot more. It made this year's budget much harder for us to put together, and the chefs do face limitations that make things harder. But at the same time, you know, all the praise in the world to them for just constantly working around different barriers and working with what they have access to.
Thank you.
Another quick question. Will everybody who's on this call be able to get a copy of the recording, or do you want us to sign up on chat?
We'll go ahead and send out a copy.
Okay, perfect.
As well as we have a nice one pager with all of our priorities that we'll send out.
Thank you, Maddie.
Of course.
We didn't hear anything about volunteers. Can you speak to volunteers a little bit? As far as the strategic plan goes.
Talk a little bit about that. One of our priorities, our third priority, and
Oh, can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think it may be on the mend.
Yes.
There was a moment that you were kind of soft, but I think you're coming back now.
Okay, well, let me know.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Jerry, I'll say that one of the sub points of our third priority, which centers around DEI, is expanding the diversity in our volunteer program and making sure that folks of all ages, abilities, social, economic, and cultural backgrounds are able to volunteer. Basically having opportunities for everyone, and also making sure that our volunteer program is really welcoming and is an environment that fosters volunteers of all from all backgrounds. Yeah, does that answer your question? Is there anything else that I can help with? I'm still cutting out a little bit. I'm sorry. Let me know if you missed any of that.
I think the basics of the thought shone through.
Yeah, and you answered my question.
Great. And I did see that would like me to add one of the priorities on the screen, I will do that right now.
I wanted to make a comment towards that. One of the things that I've discovered about our people in our building is bribery works really well to get volunteers, like, offering them, saying you will also get a free meal. That sort of thing, like when they're helping out, or, a few free food items or something. Trust me, bribery works for children and adults.
I couldn't agree more.
Yep, absolutely.
I saw a question from Heidi in the chat about has there been any thought about a garden next to the new spot? Oh, okay. So next to kind of this on
Yeah,
the slide.
so just to quickly answer that, yeah, is we have we are still far from our new spot, and we don't know where and when it is going to come. We are happy. We are just conversing with different partners, but garden spot would be great. We have a pea patch plot right now, which is mostly very demonstration kind of small activity place, but we would love to have more garden space.
Great.
Oh, I really wanted to champion the cooking demonstrations, like, because of health and so forth. That would be fantastic. I know the Mediterranean diet is considered really, really good. And that's enough out of me.
Dude, maybe we'll have to connect and I'll see if there's something that we could put together for Lake City House.
That would be cool.
Mary, were there any other questions from the RSVP that we haven't gotten to yet?
I have one question which has been touched on, but more
I can still
explicitly-
barely hear you there.
Oh my gosh. Can you hear me now, or should I type it in the chat?
Chat.
Are all of you at one location, Srijan, or are you in different places?
We're all in different places having
Oh.
our own special problems.
Okay, I was thinking we should get a partnership with a tech firm. No, I mean, seriously, and have them donate some time to set it up. Just a thought.
Well, that could still be useful at HIP. I have tech projects. Let's see. One question is, what is HIP's current relationship with LCPC, and if this is expected to change? Again, LCPC is like Lake City Presbyterian Church, where we are housed currently. We are eternally grateful for this this location. They have hosted us from the very beginning. This is where HIP was born, and yeah, I mean, this has been our home for the last how many ever years. We started in the late 90s, more than 22 decades. So our relationship in the sense has been great. We just feel like we have grown so much with the community need that we feel like this is not the place where we can best support all our people with all the need that is currently. As Darcy mentioned, our office space currently is okay, but our still storage and operating space is still limited, which is why one of the reasons we are looking for a new home, as well as something that's easily commutable, where we can work with people who can commute by bus, train, whatever that might be.
I do have one more question. I volunteered one night up at the Lutheran church, serving dinner for the people that were staying overnight there. Are you still running the overnight thing? Where they sleep there at night. They come at dinner time and they get a meal and they sleep at night there. You still doing that?
That's a great question. We used to be one of the partners that supported those meals, and we've transitioned to being the meal provider for the Oaks, the North King County Enhanced Shelter. So that's what our support looks like there. And then we've left it to other partners to fill that gap at the overnight shelter.
I talked to William the other day and he said that the Oaks, the Lake City Partners and the King County Authority had put together a proposal for the cold weather shelter thing, and they're just waiting for the mayor to sign it. I thought I'd just tell everybody that.
Nice.
Mm.
That's great.
Yeah. I see one more question from Brian. The question was, what is the growth in funding needs that will be required to meet our strategic vision? So that is something that we are currently working on. I don't have an easy answer for you right now. So right now we have the high level priorities decided, and we are working more like the detailed implementation plan. We are on doing that work currently, which will identify more specifically our funding and otherwise what our needs are going to be. So we can definitely touch base on that later. But as we work on our budget for next few fiscal years, those are the ones that will be taken into account.
Heidi had her hand up.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't believe that the rotating severe weather shelter is happening. And those folks have been sent or referred to the Oaks in Shoreline. It was started by by Melanie at the Mennonite Church, and then would rotate every 3 months to a different church.
Yeah. So maybe we are almost like 1 minute mark to our. I think we said we'll finish at 6:45. Maybe a quick closing, but if anyone else has anything to say, is this we'll follow up with the recording and the one pager with our strategic priorities. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. We would be more than happy to meet with any of you one-on-one and go over anything that you want to go over, or any other questions you have. Unless there are any pending questions, we can probably sign out and say thank you again for joining today. It's been a pleasure. And we look forward to partnering with you in the next many years.
Thank you very much for a great presentation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
We're with you. We want to help you grow.
Yay.
I would love that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Like a garden, Heidi.